We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Boysen Hodgson with a Mankind podcast, the podcast where we set out to prove every week, and I think we're doing an incredible job, that there is more than one way to be a man. Today is a conversation that I am so excited about. I've just been on fire to have this conversation. I'm sitting with Jermaine Johnson today. Jermaine Johnson is somebody I know from the Mankind Project. He is recently what we call a CLC, which is a co-leader candidate in the Mankind Project for our New Warrior training adventure, which means he has gone through some rigorous processes, gone through some leader training, been hot-seated by his own community to move into this position where the next step for him would be to become a co-leader for the New Warrior training adventure. Jermaine, say hello.
Yes. Hello. Thank you, man. I'm glad to be here. This topic is really close and dear to my heart, bro.
Yes. And Jermaine is also, has been and is one of the guys. So he is now the co-society lead with another gentleman named Mickey Young, who I hope will get on the podcast at some time here soon, of the Brotherhood of MKP. And the Brotherhood of MKP, Jermaine, why don't you tell the listeners, what is the Brotherhood of MKP?
Yeah, so the Brotherhood of MKP is episode 55, a community within a community, right?
Yes.
So, you remember that. So what we are is the wing, so to speak, of the Mankind Project that is devoted to the empowerment and support of men of color within MKP and in men's work in general. So we do a lot in the inner cities. We do a lot within the Brotherhood, and we try to really bring all of the men of color together, really to support first, right?
Yes.
To make sure that we are all in the same room when we can be. When things come up, we have a place where we can go and actually, speak what's true for us, get supported so we can get reinvigorated and go back into the real world, hopefully stronger and better.
And, talk yourself up about just a couple of the things that have happened in the last couple of years with the Brotherhood of MKP, because you guys have been on fire.
Oh, yeah, man. We're working on now our fourth NWTA, which is great. We started in 2023 doing New Warrior training adventures that are geared towards people of color. And why that's important is because we get to introduce the men's work via the weekend, via initiation, through the lens of the African-American man in the United States. Right?
Yes.
And when we do that, we bring the brothers from South Africa over. We've got brothers from other countries that participate with us. And when we do it, man, the energy is something so different, man. It's, being in the room with that many men of color doing the same thing, basically without having to code switch or without having to do what we normally have to do in our real lives. We could actually relax and get into some of that deeper work that we need to do, in my judgment.
That is incredible. Thank you. So the reason that I wanted to get together with you today and have a conversation is that the Mankind Project has we've got 20 plus years of, time doing what we've called multicultural work in the project, right? And we've got some frameworks that we use, and we've got trainings that we use, and we've got a lot of stuff that we've done over time. And my gut tells me that we are on the verge of some kind of new emergence in the way that we've been doing this work and the way that we've been understanding. So maybe a first question, and I'm going to frame it up by saying, I want to have a conversation that is at the intersection of social justice and racial healing, racial reconciliation, and embodied work like we do in the Mankind Project. So, and I hope that we'll keep it really raw and really real. And the first question I want to ask is, when was the last time you noticed something in your body reacting in a conversation about culture or race or gender or identity before your mind was even able to catch up with what was going on?
Wow. Yeah, bro. The good thing about talking about this in this context is that, even for my lived experience, I didn't really become fully aware of all of the different nuances, not only how I show up, but how I perceive others that show up in my life, right? And when I add culture to it, it opens up this whole nother area of work that I didn't even know I needed when I came here. Right. And that was a big awareness for me. So when I'm answering this question for you, I want to start a little bit further back, which is, for me, what I learned initially in my journey in men's work, and it's going to sound really simple, but it's really not, is how to tell myself the truth about what's happening to me. Right.
Oof, yeah.
Because as a kid and growing up, what I learned to do was how we put the mask on, right? We talk about the mask exercise. It's that part of me that I want you to see, right? 99% of the times it is not the authentic me, but it's the me that I believe I have to show you, maybe in order to keep me safe, in order for me to feel worthy of being in the space.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons why I may put that mask on. But one of the first things that I learned was what might happen if I took that mask off. But in order for me to do that, I have to first be willing to tell myself the truth about what's happening. Right.
Yes.
And then we go into, when we go to New Warrior Training Adventures, we learn everything from the basic, what is the emotion I'm experiencing, all the way up to differentiating toxic shame from what we know now as healthy shame, right?
Yes.
Or healthy guilt and toxic guilt. So that's where it began for me, was in this space of what's really happening to me, right? So instead of me only showing you anger, man, I'm really sad, but what I'm going to do is put this anger out front because I don't want you to know I'm sad. What might happen if I took all of that down, sat in that sadness, and just say, hey, Boysen, man, what just happened between me and you, it really made me sad, right? From that place of vulnerability. Because one, I'm telling myself the truth first before I'm even explaining it to you, right?
Yeah.
And so from that space of what's really true about me, there's some miraculous things that happen, right? One is when I get those words that are very triggering to me, when someone might say something to me that's highly triggering, instead of me trying to hide, repress, or deny it, or make it where you can't see it, or argue it down and convince or convert you into my way, I simply stop for a minute and go, wow, that really stung a little bit, right? Like what this person just said to me brought up real energy. And instead of me attacking it or defending it, the question becomes, what piece of that is true that I really believe, right? And then from that space, I begin to go deeper about what's causing the trauma, what's causing the charge, right? As opposed to, oh man, you said I was a piece of shit or a piece of crap, right? There's something in me, if that really stirs, right? There's something in me that probably believes that I am a piece of crap in that way. And from that space, I can say, well, what have I been doing that's making me feel that way? And really start doing some more of the inner work, right? And that's where it began. That was kind of the foundation. So when I started to look into how cultural like things like systemic racism or blind spots that a white man may have around me, I began asking myself first, which parts of these things are triggering me, right? And which parts of them are true, that are touching a belief that I might be carrying, and which part is a more of a cultural shadow, those beliefs about me that I might need to look at that at. So it actually broadened the way that I can look at it, almost like a bird's eye view, as opposed to a very thin needle.
And are there times when thank you for that. So reflecting back what I just heard, we start from the very beginning and try and learn to understand and identify what we're actually feeling, what's true about what we're experiencing. And then in interactions with others, that becomes a part of the bigger reflection. And now, what kind of cultural shadows? So there's my shadow stuff, my shadow belief, my shadow ways that show up, but there's also ways in which I'm fitting into patterns that are bigger cultural shadows. And yes. I'm a dude sitting here recognizing how I grew up in a white supremacist culture without consciousness of it, without language for it, and I'm 54 years old and still learning how it shows up in my body and how it shows up in my interactions. What do you see show up with you in containers that, let's just be honest, a lot of the times are really white in the Mankind Project?
Yeah. That's something that, as a man of color, everywhere I go, I'm faced with that minority feeling, right? So what I want you to hear is that it's not new for me, right? Yeah. It's in most cases, it's not even uncomfortable because I'm so used to being in the space that I just conform, and I know the ways to be. I know how to edit myself in a way that doesn't seem threatening. I know how to make sure that the power that I'm wielding is in check, right? And so those are shadow beliefs that I carry about me, is that sometimes I can show up in a room and it just might scare somebody, right? I don't mean for it to be that way, but culturally, the way our society is set up, the angry black man, the angry black woman, this is something that is kind of bred, in us. And not only white people, but also people of color. These kinds of things are thrown at us in a way where we don't even notice when we're internalizing those things, right? And I know for me, it took me years to deconstruct all of the different pieces of what I was doing that was informing and reinforcing all of those beliefs about me, right? We get into internal oppression, where I start to believe those things as opposed to it just being something that somebody made up about me, or, that one story where all black people do X or all white people do X. Even within my own constituency, man, we might have 50 men in the room, and I guarantee you there are 48 different renditions about what's happening in that room, even amongst people of color, And so when I get to that piece of the work for me, and I start to notice those beliefs that I carry, the beautiful part that the work has taught me is that I can choose to do something different, right? I can look at what's happening, tell myself the truth, and decide, is that really who I want to be, right? Do I want to be a man who is in support of this man that may have a blind spot, right? Or do I want to tell myself the truth about the parts I play, right, in perpetuating some of that stuff, right? I remember when I was a kid, man, I wasn't really good. I wasn't a good guy. So so when police would pull me over, my belief was, man, I already know what I just did, a week ago. Maybe they pulling me over for that. So I'm already in this, I'm not a complete angel when it happens, and it happens to me. And I know sometimes it does happen that way. But that piece around me being true to myself first and telling myself the truth and really feeling into what it is for me is always the catalyst for what comes next and what I'm able to change and what choices I'm able to make from there.
Thank you. Are there ways in which, so you were talking in a reference of power, and I'm in the same way. Are there ways in which you notice how oppression, power, privilege, and trauma show up in your body that you're aware of these days that you may not have been aware of before getting into men's work and doing this kind of work?
A lot. Man, like I said earlier, man, a lot of what I know now is because of the self-awareness that I have in doing this work. There were a lot of cultural shadow that I carried that I wasn't even aware, like it wasn't on my radar at all. Like it was, this was just the way things were. Or, one thing I used to love to say is, this is just part of my personality. That was my go-to, I react that way just because that's part of my personality. Not really fully understanding the nuances that the beliefs that I carried about myself throughout my life, what impact that was actually having on my choices. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's the way that my body informs me today is completely different from what it was when I was 20. The very first thing I do now, especially when I notice something that's making me uncomfortable, is I check in really quickly. Sometimes it's with a deep breath.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just a longer than normal blink, right? What's really going on right now? Ooh. Why did that experience create that response from me, right? And it begins to live there. And oftentimes it might take me a couple of hours, maybe a day, maybe a week to actually process it. So sometimes I'm not even in a position to react to whatever the stimulus is until I've fully processed what it is that I'm feeling, because I don't really know what it is, and it happens a lot, believe it or not, in my personal life, like with my wife and with my kids. Mm-hmm. Sometimes something will happen and I'll go, whoa, they didn't really say much, but there's something that touched something that's not really, I'm going to need to take a look at what this is. And it might be 2 or 3 days later, and I'll come to my wife and go, hey, you remember 2 days ago when you said that? This is what it stirred up for me. And then I'm able to not only tell myself the truth and respond to it authentically, but also give her a chance, which is something I never was able to do. Wow, give her a chance to respond to what her intention was, right? While hearing the impact that it had on me. And so, the view is so wide, bro. It's like it doesn't not touch any piece of my life at this point,
Yes. I love that. And as you were talking about, you're already kind of doing it. One of the pieces that I wanted to bring in the frame, and look for stuff in the show notes, right? But I'm going to refer to a couple of books that have just really been crazy big for me right now. Book by a woman named Ray Johnson called Embodied Activism is one of the books I want you to check out. And another book that I want you to check out is called My Grandmother's Hands by Resma Menakem. And as you were talking about that piece right there, Resma Menakem has this thing that he repeats like 100 times in his books that he calls the Vimbas. Notice what vibrations, images and thoughts, meanings, behaviors, affects or emotions, sensations are showing up in your body right now. And when you said like, stop, check in, take a long blink, take a deep breath, it's that noticing that we start to be able to hone in on in ourselves in doing the work that I think is really
my
cool.
body used to be rogue, bro. Like I would, I
Mm.
only really had two emotions that were auto, right? Just automatic, right? One was anger, and then the other one was more anger, right?
Mm.
So everything that would pierce, as opposed to me having the ability to stop and say, what is this? What is the message I'm receiving? Right. And as opposed to doing that, my anger would kick in and I would just on the attack, just directly, because whatever this is, I don't like it. So I need to get it off me. And the only way I know how to do that is to scare the shit out of you. And that was the tactic that I used. Right now, it takes a longer time. And what I'm hoping is that as I develop more in this space and continue to do my work and my deeper work, that the reaction time becomes quicker, and I do notice a change. Like it used to take me weeks to figure out what was happening to me. Then that turned into days. Then that turned into a couple of hours. So now what my want is how beautiful would that be if I could do that in the present moment, right? If I could process those emotions, know what I'm feeling, formulate what's true about me and deliver it to you by way of effective communication, then bro, I think I'll be fully living in my authenticity and the way I really want to be, right? And it gets a little bit tricky when we start to add in the cultural nuances, right?
Yeah.
Because there are things that we have to think about when it's cross-cultural that I don't really have to think about when it's just me or somebody who looks like me or has a similar experience than me. I kind of can bypass that piece and go right
Yes.
to it.
So what are some of the things that you think that you see showing up in containers of men's work or generally out there in the culture? Because I totally get what you're saying. There's an added level of friction, right? There's added friction in the system when you're having to kind of overcome that stuff. Have you seen stuff show up in containers of men's work that it's like, oh shit, we need to get through this cultural barrier before we can actually get to what's actually going on here? Is there anything that you can think of that shows up like that?
Yeah, and it's a lot, bro, and that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons I'm going to LOMG this week, is so that I could really speak to the greater body of men, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a couple of things that we're up against, right? And I'll
Yes.
just iron a few of them out. One is, and I resonate with this, bro, because I'm the same way in my own life. I don't really like change. I don't like to embrace what I don't know.
Yeah.
And so one of the issues we have is explaining to men who have been in this organization in particular for 30 years.
Long time.
Hey, bro, we got to shake some things up. We're going to change a couple of things, right? And I'm very sensitive to the feelings of men who hear that, because I also live in that space where if I already know it, when I get up, I go here and I do that and I put my keys here and I do, then if you shake it up and go, man, I'm going to put you in this different space. You can't put your toothbrush there and your keys there. It's going to just throw me out of whack, right? So I'm aware of that. So I'm very sensitive and I move a little bit slower when it comes to that. So that's one piece, right? The next piece is how do I convince you to make space for me in the way that I need it to be made, right?
Yes.
Because oftentimes it could look like, oh man, but bro, you got the Brotherhood of MKP, bro. You guys are staffing with us. You do it. From one side of it, it could look like, well, what else do you want? That kind of, we're doing everything we can, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a piece around being honest about it, but also sensitive about how do I inform you, right? that what you're doing, good intentions, whatever that might be, is not good enough, right? And how it's not good enough, and the reason it's important is because if we take the stance, and I'll just say this, and this will be a little bit triggering to some people, but I get a lot of people that'll say to me, well, it's much better than it was 60 years ago. Oof, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, man, I mean, we still got a long way to go, but man, it sure is better than it was in XYZ, right? And what I try to do is take a moment and say to the individual who's in that space, it must be nice, right? To feel like I got another 40 or 50 years until this gets, 25 or 30% better. It must be nice because in your world, I could understand your life is not in jeopardy. You're not feeling removed from something. So, in your body, I could understand why you would feel that way. But understand this, for every day that you can wait, there's lives being taken. There are structural, systemic things being reinforced and reintroduced that are causing me harm, right?
Yes.
And so that's the piece that I really would like to get through is listen, bro, if I could just sit back and just be loved on by all these men in this great organization, trust me, that's all I want to do. I don't want to be on the front lines talking about, bro, can you just prepare a space for me? I'll hold my own. I'll carry my own water. I'll cook my own food. I just need you to carve out a small space for me. That's all, right? And so those are just some of the things, some of the challenges in introducing not only safety for people of color, but a place where we could go deep enough to get to those places that we're already afraid to get to.
Yeah.
And nobody does that better than us, bro. So I want to put this caveat in there. And I know a lot of organizations are doing a lot of great things, bro. But the way that the Mankind Project does what we do, I have yet to see another organization that can match that, pound for pound. We are the best at what we do. And so that's the reason why my argument is not about divisiveness. It's about how can we unify and become a well-oiled machine where we're all working for the same goal. That's what it's really about for me.
Woo! Yes. I was reminded of this earlier today, and I want to get your response to it. So there's an activist educator guy who's been doing men's work for a very long time in Massachusetts named Hajai Shearer. Shout out to Hajai. And I had a really, back when I was still real young in the work and real dewy-eyed and real excited and real evangelical, right? I wanted to get Hajai in a circle because I loved Hajai. I thought he was so cool, right? Want to get him in a circle. And I was inviting him to men's work. And his question to me was, okay, so Boysen, what's the Mankind Project look like? No, really, Boysen, what's the Mankind Project look like? And getting me honest about that. And he said something that like resonates in my body to this day, which was, I've never been in a multicultural container created by white people that I could trust. And there was no argument that I could make with that. So how does that reflect in what is happening with the Brotherhood and what's happening with PAME and what's happening with the Latino brothers that are getting together and what's happening with the GBTQ Brotherhood that's getting together? How does that reflect for you?
Yeah, that statement is really deep, and I hear that so much from a lot of the men that we represent. I'm gonna throw Mickey Young in here real fast because he and I are co-society leads right now. And I think it's a beautiful thing because we both have opposing thoughts on this, right? A lot of the men who speak to Mickey let him know that when they experience containers of color, the level of safety and love and belonging is so big for them that it prevents them from being able to show up in white spaces, right? There is a piece that says to them, why would I devote time in a space that either doesn't want me, doesn't know how to prepare for me, or just simply is not interested in what it takes to prepare for me, versus spending time with men who get me, right? Because I'm going to tell you what happens when that type of safety is created. What happens is the deeper work that we're here to do actually gets done. You know, I sit in containers that are majority white all the time. I still do my work in those containers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't compare to the type of work I'm capable of doing when I'm in men of color containers, right? And to me, it's not only about white men being present, but it's about the belief that I carry about me that says, one, when I go to this deeper, vulnerable place, I don't want you to hurt me while I'm down there, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you the bigger piece, bro, is I also don't want to hurt you when I go down there, right? So what ends up happening is we have to edit or mute ourselves in some kind of way to make sure that the belief we carry, that if we go there, either I'm going to hurt you or you're going to hurt me, that belief is so real, it prevents me from reaching those really rock bottom traumas that we're really here to accomplish, right? So that's what men are talking about. It's not general safety like I think I'm going to get beat up. Right. You know, it's not that safety. And I can hobnob, I can have, drinks and eat food and be completely clear. But when we're talking about going to those places that I've been hiding from for 40 years of my life, right? And now we've built this container that said, we can hold you here, right? And it's a true statement, bro. We got some strong containers that can hold it. What stops me from going there is when I look around the room and I have to be really careful about opening myself up in a way that says somebody could really get hurt in this space. And I might be the cause, or I might be the recipient of that pain. And either way, I don't want to do that. You know?
This is wow. This is why we're having the conversation. This is so why we're having the conversation. In the Ray Johnson book, in Embodied Activism, the kind of basic fundamental premise, and this is through Russ Momentum's work too, is like, it's not just 40 years. It's 400. And it's not just for you. It's in me too. From the other side of that, it's 400. Because that perpetrator, oppressor, oppressed, intergenerational, multi-generational, back through the ancestry, right? Bell Hooks talked about this too. When we actually fundamentally do that work, we're not just healing the present. We're not just healing the generations to come. We're working at healing the generations that have gone, that are past. We're working at healing the past. And there's something that is so, I can really feel that. So again, that's an advocate for, and I'm not going to say it the way you said it. You said like for creating the space for you. It's like, nah, there's some like, okay, yeah, creating the space for you, but fuck that. It's like letting you create the space in a fundamentally empowered and empowering way.
Yeah.
And then meeting you on the field. in a way that is going to trigger all of this stuff, that it's going to activate. I'm not going to say trigger. Trigger is like some kind of disempowering, but it's going to activate all of this stuff and give us an opportunity to look at it. So like for me as a white guy doing this kind of work and wanting to be engaged in this really big old work, the body is essential. The body is the tuning fork. And I've been looking at my own behaviors and like, what are the subtle ways? What are the totally unconscious ways that I am still exhibiting power over the women in my life, the people of color in my life, the LGBTQ people in my life? How do I still show up in this cis white male hetero educated body that is still like a play of dominance? And how do I take responsibility for that? And not blame you and not get shamey about it and not feel guilty, but it's just like, let's be here and do this together. If you're available.
Man, that's the piece, and what I find is the fastest way to getting to that kind of embodiment, like what you just described, as a white guy, right, is when I have true skin in the game. I'm going to tell you a short story, and this has happened to me twice. Two men that I love and respect dearly, white men within the project. One of them has a black grandson, and when his grandson was being born, he called me in tears. Jermaine, basically, I'm gonna just paraphrase. What action can I take? Right? And this man has been an activist. He has been. I mean, this guy is the role model for what it means to be an ally, right? Mm-hmm. And even in that space, him being connected to something that he loved more than he probably loved himself at that point, right? He realized that now this is life or death for him as well. So now he wants to work with me hand and fist to do whatever we need to do to get the ripple effects going to end all of this. Had another man, younger man, white guy, got married 4 years ago, is having his first child, and his wife is African. So he's getting ready to have a black child. Same scenario. Bro, is there anything that I could do, any way that I could be to not only support what I love more than anything in this world, but to help protect him, right? And it's a boy, so we already know what that feeling, is like. But I say that, and I give you guys that to say this, that when I am attached to a certain particular experience, what it does is it activates something in me that says, yeah, we came a long way for the past 50 years, but we can't wait another 2 years. We can't wait another year. It activates that real something has to be done, right? The men that I see that are kind of on the outskirts that'll take power, privilege, and difference training classes and do all the minimums they have to do to be on leader track, right? But don't take any additional classes, won't read any additional books or anything personal for themselves. They have and this is almost 100% of the time, they have no real skin in the game because everything and everybody around them doesn't look like me. So yeah, I'll do this here and there. I'll do, whatever I can. And, I'm on this leader track thing, but bro, I'm not really interested in going too deep into this intercultural stuff. And, it's already bad enough I got to do a second staff meeting because of this. It's that kind of an attitude, right? So for me, my hope is that at some point in everyone's life, and this is including me, that I get to know and love something and someone that doesn't look like me or have the same experience as me.
Yes.
Because that's the catalyst, bro. That is the real key to connection that spawns the change, right? That does the thing that I'm asking for outright. Hey guys, I just want a place here. I just want to be able to sit at the table and eat with you, right? It makes that ask seem ridiculous. Bro, what do you mean? Of course we've had this carved out, this whole side carved out for you for the past 10 years, right? That's the difference, bro. And so how do I, as co-lead in the society, use my platform to help inform men who are in that space? Because it's not the men who have skin in the game, not the people who love people who don't look like them or have, connections that are very strong. It's not them that we have to convince or ask or be with or, whatever that is. It's those that are still don't have anything outside of the norm that they grew up in, right? And so the fear of saying the wrong thing comes up. The what happens when we ostracize people for making mistakes, that will start coming up. I don't want to be, canceled if I say the wrong thing. And that's the piece that we got to get away from, bro. Because I'm going to tell you something. As long as we are in relationship with each other, it's inevitable that we're going to wound each other. It's inevitable that I'm going to say or do something that you don't like. The pieces around how do we tend to the wound, right?
Yes.
How do we put the Band-Aid on and clean it and restart and accept responsibility for the impact that it had, even if the intention was good, right? And this is all of the things we learn and we teach in the Mankind Project. This is what we need to use to get us into integrity with each other as people of difference. And I know it sounds simple, bro. It does, because even when I say it, I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we not just doing it? It is the cornerstone of the work that we do. Every week when I'm in iGroup, and these men who just got initiated are in iGroup, you know what we're doing? We're doing accountabilities and clearings and all of these bucketings and all of these good things so that we could be close to one another.
Yes.
And now I don't know this to be true, but on the rise in leadership within our organization, is there a point where men just stop doing that? where that's not the thing to do anymore? And now we have to look at the babies, right? The 1 and 2 staff men and go, wow, these guys are doing really good work, and get back to the roots of why we're here in the first place, bro.
There might just be some elitism and kind of a different kind of hierarchy and power structure that develops inside our containers, right? It's a different kind of frame of power, privilege, and difference that we set up in our thing. So how I know that I am gonna mess up, right? And the more aware, the more embodied and aware I get, and the more feedback I get from outside, right? The more deeply I connect with my kids, the more deeply I connect with the people of color in my life, the more deeply I connect with LGBTQ people in my life, right? The more I screw up, the more I get reminded. And so advice about like grace. How do we hold each other with grace through this process?
And that's a beautiful question, bro. And I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning of this segment, right? What is it about this experience that's touching a piece of me that makes me react in that way, right? If we start there, I mean, you could say anything. Yeah, man, such and such. And I might view it as something that was racist in my past, right? The thing is, if I say to you, Boysen, man, that was a racist statement, right? One or two things are possible to happen. One, you really believe that you're a racist somewhere in your body, right? In your mind, wherever that lives, right? You believe that. Or two, it's so far from the truth, it makes you curious, right? So the first thing that I say to men interculturally is, bro, stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and what to do externally, right? Learn how to talk to you. I need to learn how to talk to me in a better way. I need to be in a position to tell myself the truth about what I just heard, right? Because in the truth, bro, I'm going to tell you what a great thing that happens when I started telling myself the truth. All of the bad choices that I've ever made in my life, all of the people that I hurt growing up, and all of these things that I tried real hard to dig holes, bury, and put bricks and cinder blocks on top.
Yes.
When I began to integrate all of those pieces of me, right? Extreme, bad, horrible, wish I could just throw it all away, to all of the great, beautiful, touching things that I've ever done. When I learned how to integrate all of those into the being that I am now, all of the energy from it dissipated for me, bro.
Yes.
It just dissipated, right? So if I was a thief at one time and somebody would say, man, did you steal my dollar bill? Even though I know I didn't steal it, I still get the hit because in my head, I know that I'm a thief, right? But when I begin to embody, where in my life was I a thief? Oh yeah, when I was 8, I stole the candy bar. When I was 15, I stole somebody's car, whatever that is, right? And then, am I still that man today? If I had the choice to do that today, would I do that? No. Well, why, Jermaine? Because what I learned about me is this, right? It's taking those really horrible parts, those parts of me that I judge to be horrible, and turning them inward. And what I normally tell people is, I can't be a drug counselor unless I was a drug addict, bro. I can't do it, right? So I had to have had some dealings with drugs that affected my life in order for me to be an effective drug counselor. There's beauty in that. There's beauty in the descent and then coming back up as the new person with the new choices that can share from that space. So when those things come up for you, man, and somebody thinks you a racist because you made a mistake or a misogynist or whatever it is, look inward and really think about how you're talking to you, to the first person. Then once we clean that up and we really get right with ourselves and learn to honor those pieces of us that was doing that, and knowing that the sum total of me is all of that, then we can start to diffuse a lot of that shame that comes up and that guilt. And what it'll do is turn it into curiosity that goes, well, Jermaine, what was it about that hurt you, bro? Because my intention was to do this, and I'm realizing the impact was different. And I'm curious to know what that was. And from that place, I get to learn and grow and cultivate a real relationship. One more thing about that. My man, Duke Bufai Bull, he's the Brotherhood admin right now. Love this guy to death. He talks about when a relationship is broken, right?
Yes.
When we string it back together in that place, it actually gets stronger because we're adding more material, right? I never thought about that in that way until he said that to me. Well, bro, if we break a relationship and we mend it back, don't you realize that it's making that relationship stronger? Now imagine having that kind of ideology or feeling or belief about me and you. So then when I do something or we experience something that maybe tore us apart a little bit, my willingness to get back into right relationship with you, once that happens, we're actually stronger, bro, as people, as humans.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's just beautiful, man.
Yes. I notice for me that as I continue to incrementally get better at this, the phrase that comes up is I say less because I don't have to now. When I get called out or called in on this stuff, which happens regularly in my family, I don't have to defend anymore. I can just stop and say, oh, if I listen for a few minutes here and then feed back and say, do you feel like you've been listened to? It's like the defensiveness is gone. I learned something. Maybe I do a little bit better the next time that it happens. And we keep going, right?
We practice, bro.
We practice. We keep practicing. Yeah. Dude, what's one thing that you really want people to take away from this conversation?
A couple of phrases I'll say. It's not about excellence. It's not about perfection. It's just about moving through life the best way that we can. The second piece is you are perfect in your design. All of us as human beings were brought into this world absolutely perfect. And I believe it now, I believed it then, and I'll believe it till the day I die, right? The question then becomes, and we say this in iGroup, we say this on weekends, what type of person do you want to be? Because none of the other stuff really matters, bro. You know, it's all a part of me. I can't erase it, right? So when I know that I am perfect and it's not about excellence or perfection, then I can relax into the space that says I am me and I am flawed. You are you, and I know also that you're flawed, even when you don't know that. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. I can still love you through that, bro. We can love each other through all of it if we're willing to do that.
And thank you. Jermaine Johnson. And circle back to, and if we are able to do that together, maybe there's some way that together with this incredibly strong relationship, with this resilience in how we interact with each other, that we can undo some of the stuff. I almost used a big F-bomb there. out in the systemic, right? Out in the structural, can we undo some of this structural stuff that's still being driven by the trauma and the fear and the power and the dominance?
Yep. I heard a man once say, I wish every politician had to go through a New Warrior training adventure before they could be a politician, before they could be anything that's responsible for the lives of humans. That should be a prerequisite, bro. Have you been to your weekend yet? And if the answer is yes, we'll consider you.
This has been Jermaine Johnson, co-society leader for the Brotherhood of MKP. Jermaine, I love you. It's so good to be with you. And I get to see you in person this weekend, and I'm so stoked.
No doubt, bro. I'll see you. Bells and whistles, Friday and Saturday, bro.
Awesome.
This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Boysen Hodgson and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.
Hey, it's Boysen here with the Mankind Podcast. We are closing in on 100 5-star reviews of this podcast, and we have a goal. Brandon and I want to get to 250 5-star reviews. So help us out, will you? Please go to the Mankind Podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. Thank you. Hey, it's Boysen. On the Mankind Podcast, we've brought some incredible guests on to talk about the importance of doing the work to improve our mental and emotional health. And here's the truth. Multiple times over the last 25 years, I've had the help of one-on-one work with some amazing therapists. For me, for my wife, for both of us as adoptive parents, and for our kids. The Mankind Project and Men's Group, though awesome, are not a substitute for professional mental health support. And so I'm thrilled that the Mankind Podcast now has BetterHelp as a sponsor for the show. BetterHelp works online. It asks you what you're working on and then matches you for live one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist, someone trained to work with you, listen, and offer helpful insights. I'm using BetterHelp. It's super easy, and I like what I'm getting. If getting one-on-one support in the comfort of your own space feels like a good direction for you, I invite you to check it out. Go to the link in the show notes or betterhelp.com/mankind. And if you sign up, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy.